Welcome to the Haunted Mountains. So I found a couple things. See my little friend down here. I rescued one other item. The laugh. Oh yeah. It's all wood. Thought it was cool, so I saved it. I'm like, hey, it's not ugly. You know what I mean? Save it, put it out for Samhain. Okay, no. Heard it howling on the wind in the haunted mountains. In the haunted mountains. Rustling, crackling through the trees. Hear the wind. Ancestors calling on the wind. Saw you deep inside the crystal ball. Inside the crystal as it floated in the air. In a chamber, heart and soul, as the wind blows shore, as the pouring rain on the haunted mountain. There we go. I think that was a good intro, considering the name of the chapter. Yes. Right. Oh, okay. The haunted mountains. The sun broke over the ridge of the mountains, rimming it with light, lifted higher to flood across the wide meadowlands that stretched to the night's edge, falling away toward the west. The sudden deluge of light caught and revealed something moving on the vastness of the plains. It was a pony cart, accompanied by several figures. They made a tiny, lonely company as they crawled steadily on through the empty lands. A strange, tall being led the pony, the faded rags of his once bright clothes flapping about him. A much worn young man and woman followed behind. Amongst the blankets piled in the cart, another older woman lay pale and still. As the first rays of the morning sun touched them, the tall one pulled to a stop and raised a hand to shield his eyes. "Daylight at last!" Gila, the clown, exclaimed thankfully. He gazed ahead toward the mountain range, which thrust up so abruptly from the level plains and filled the whole horizon to the east. With the sun behind them, their western slopes were still filled with deep shadow and sharp contrast to the brightness of the plains. They seemed like some dark beast brooding over its domains. "At last you can see clearly where we're bound," called to the others. "The mountains of Morn. How much farther are they?" asked Lou, trying to estimate the distance himself. "We'll be in them by nightfall," Gila promised him. The buoyancy with which no amount of hardship seemed able to defeat. Ain had climbed into the cart to examine the resting woman by the light. She did so gently but thoroughly. Her youthful face aged by her concern. "She's still the same," she told Lou. "The wound's not bled more, but she's very weak, and I can't arouse her from sleep anymore." Lou shook his head irritably and looked urgently to the clown. "And you're certain we'll find help for Tolta in those mountains?" "By the whispered rumors I picked up in my travels, many of Ayar's druids and physicians and artisans have taken refuge there," Gila said. "So they're looking for a wise woman or wise person. It's sure that with my own modest skills we'll find help for her and safe haven from the Fomor, for all of us as well." "Look, couldn't we rest just a bit?" Ain complained warily, climbing down. "We've been traveling a day and night without let up. The jolting can't be good for Tolta. We have to keep moving," Lou said firmly. "I feel that if we don't get her to a healer quickly, she'll have no chance. Just thank Gila that we have the cart to carry her." On their return to Ayr, it had been the courageous or foolhardy clown who had boldly re-entered the Fomor seaport to fetch out his pony cart. They had then sped away inland, hoping to stay ahead of the Fomor parties they assumed would be sent after them. Lou's one goal since had been to find help for his foster mother. "Now that I can see, I can try missing some of the biggest holes," Gila said, urging the pony on again. The two young people fell inside behind him. "One thing worries me, Gila," Lou said thoughtfully. "Once we reach the mountains, how will we find these people? I know generally where to go." "Generally? Is that enough? I mean, it's a very large place." "It's enough. Once we're close, I'm thinking they'll find us. They're on the lookout for strangers entering the mountains, that they are." "But since we are strangers, will they accept us?" Ain asked. "I have an acquaintance with some who've taken refuge there," Gila explained. "They'll accept me all right. He paused and then added lightly, "Of course, we'll have to live long enough to find them." "And what is that supposed to mean?" asked Ain. "Ah, well, the mountains are said to be haunted," he answered in a careless way. I think that's similar to Sherwood Forest being haunted. Let's see. "The tales of the things dwelling there could drive a man mad with fear. It's for that very reason the Daedanons have chosen to hide there. Few for more would have the courage to seek them in that place and risk a meeting with what's lurking there." As usual, the clown passed on these distressing facts with great gusto. Lou wasn't sure whether to take Gila seriously or not. But he did keep a keen eye on the mountains as they approached, and he did notice with a certain disquiet that even when the sun rose to light the western slopes, the shadows weren't completely chased away. They've only retreated to the hollows and vales to lie in wait for the coming of the night. As the sun settled redly behind the western plains, the shadows crawled forth again to reclaim the mountainsides. They engulfed as well the little party that made its way laboriously up into them. Gila came upon the semblance of a trail winding into the lower hills. It made their travel a bit easier, but the efforts of all three were needed to move the cart forward at times. Lou hoped that they would find some haven soon. Beyond Talta's worsening condition, the rest of them were rapidly growing weaker. They had little rest in days. Food and water were gone. Even the contents of Gila's amazing cloak were exhausted. It was only the need to find shelter and help for Talta quickly that kept them pushing onward. Above them, the mountains of Morn rose ominously under the drifting oval of a nearly full moon. Hey, that's close right now, too. Its light gazed the mountaintops and open surfaces of the slopes with a white glow. In contrast, the bewildering series of canyons they made their way along were often plunged into a profound darkness that found the trio linking hands for safety. The farther they climbed, the greater Lou's sense of discomfort grew. He became more and more certain that something indeed was haunting this place. He couldn't find a clear reason for his concern. He felt that something was round them, something strange and hostile. He searched the moonlit hillsides, the shadowed rocks, and the path behind and ahead continuously, and saw no signs of life, no shadows moving save their own. Remember I told you shadows on the ground. I wasn't joking, but He began to wonder if his imagination was creating the impression in his mind, until Ain moved close to him and murmured, "I have the oddest feeling about this place. It's so empty. I've no sense of any animals round us. It's as if something had chased them all away." "I've no unhappiness about that," Lou replied. "My worry was more that something was stalking us. But that's just it. Don't you see? There's nothing at all out there. Didn't you notice how silent it was? I've been stalked by a cougar before, once." He understood then that this was exactly the thing that had been disturbing him. There was a heavy silence round them, as if they'd been sealed inside a jar. No night birds called. No insects played their songs. No wind whistled in the rocks. The only sounds were their own, and even these were curiously muffled. "It's nothing to be concerning yourselves about," Gila told them in an airy tone. "Just keep on climbing. I think The slope is opening out ahead. It was. The moonlight now began to fall upon the ground around them, and they could see that they had left the canyons to mount a smooth hillside, swept up in an easy grade before them toward a rounded top that showed gray against the darkly brooding backdrop of the higher mountains. Gila stopped abruptly, staring ahead. "What is it?" Lou asked. "Look there," Gila said, pointing ahead. Lou saw it too. Cone yellow light thrust skyward from the crest of the hill. "There's a fire up there," said Gila. His words were immediately followed by a dreadful clamor. It was a ragged tear of sound, a wailing cry from many voices, blending into one pain-filled noise. Came from above, hanging and then echoing away. "A fire and something else," Gila amended. He looked to the others, beaming. Shall we go see?" "Gila, do we have to?" Lou asked his friend with immense fatigue. "So much has happened to us these past days, I'm not certain I can deal with anything more. And what about Ain?" "Nonsense, lad. Your adventures have only made you the stronger. Just assert that will of yours, and Ain can surely deal with anything. She's a god's sister, isn't she?" He slapped her playfully across the back at this. She cast him a nasty look in reply. "Look, you want to find shelter and aid for your Tolta," Gila went on. So you'll have to trust me now. That you will. "You'll have to stay by me and follow me without questions." Ain shrugged. If it's some magic, I don't think any of the powers I have will help us, Lou. It looks as if we'll have to trust the clown." "Thank you for your confidence," said Gila, with mock graciousness. The foolish smile beamed again in the darkness. "So then let's be on, shall we?" He started off with the cart, but as if an afterthought, he threw back over his shoulder to them. "Oh, and remember, whatever happens, show no fear." "No fear at all?" "It could be your end. That it could. He is doing very little to ease my worrying," Lou remarked glumly to Ain. As they fell in behind the clown, they reached the crest of the hill and climbed above it very slowly, easing up into the clear view of the light's source. Lou was tense from anticipating what they would find now. But it didn't seem alarming, only a bonfire in the center, a flat circular hilltop surrounded by small objects, at least 20 set at equal distances. The fire cast long shadows out from each object like spokes radiating from a wheel's hub. The three paused on the crest of the hill to survey this scene. "You've come at last, have you?" A cracked and dusty voice called from the direction of the fire. "I've been waiting long enough for you. Come closer." Gila at once moved forward, leading the pony cart. The other two stayed close beside him. As they neared the circle of the objects, Lou began to see why Gila had told them to show no fear. For what surrounded the fire set on short stakes were human heads. Wow. All were turned inward toward the flames. Their eyes were shut. Long hair, loose in the warrior's style, hung round the ragged stumps of their necks in tangled masses. They must have been freshly severed, Lou thought. For although no blood dripped from them, the features looked soft and untouched by decay. Indeed, the ruddy shifting glow of the bonfire endowed them with an eerie semblance of life. The three stopped once again at the edge of the circle, the backs of several heads right before them. Now Lou was aware of a figure seated across the fire, looking toward them. Seemed to be a woman, scrawny and very old, her hair a thick, woolly mass of gray about her head. Though she looked toward them, he couldn't see her eyes, only shadowy patches in the thin face. "Come closer, closer," she complained in a harsh rasp. "I want to see you." "Well, we'll leave the cart here," Gila murmured. He dropped the pony's lead and stepped forward, Ain beside him. Only Lou hesitated, but he recalled the clown's words, and the woman lying wounded in the cart. He could let nothing risk his losing Talta a second time. He followed them through into the circle, stepping between the two of the heads and stopping beside Ain and Gila, close to the fire. He now had a clear look at the hag through the flames, or hagtess. That would be a wise woman. That was not a negative term originally. It meant wise person, wise woman. Okay. Told him that no matter how close they came to her, she wouldn't be seeing them. She was blinded in some grotesque way that had taken her eyes and burned away the surrounding flesh, so that now her eyes were only gaping sockets, like those of a skull surrounded by cracked folds of white scar tissue. So like the ancient in Vikings, right? Except it's a man. Similar look. Anyway, but the black caverns weren't quite empty. In the left one shimmered the delicate silver tracery of a spider's web spun across the opening. Ah, web of word. Ah. And in the center of the pattern, the bloated insect sat. Huh? Its glossy red body glinting fixedly at them like a pupil set in a ghastly silken eye. "I've my own ways of seeing," she grated, startling Lou with her apparent reading of his thoughts. Can't hide anything from her. "It's 2 pairs of eyes I have, and 2 mouths to welcome you as well." She raised a wand of polished wood from her lap at this, and swept it round the circle. As she did, each of the heads came to life. Their eyes flicked open and rolled wildly around. Their faces worked in dreadful contortions, and from the open jaws of each there came a screeching, the strident voices joining in a stupefying din, a chorus swelling and to reverberate through the surrounding hills. Lou's instinct was to recoil, to turn and bolt from the circle, but he looked to Gila, who stood calmly beside him, smiling his foolish smile, apparently quite unmoved. It helped the young man recover his own will to fight the terror down. So, remember, fear is the mind killer, right? It's to overcome. Okay. It held his insides in a grip of ice. He forced himself to endure the piercing noise without an outward sign of fear. A glance at Ain told him she was doing the same. I also might add a rite of passage. Haha. At the last, the caterwauling died away. The jaws set themselves in leers of death, the eyes fixed wide open, all staring up at the trio. "A clever trick," Gila commented pleasantly. "Did it take you very long to train them all?" The hag's head snapped toward him, the eyeless sockets leveling upon him as if she fixed him with her glare. The web shivered. "You are a courageous man," she grated. "But you do better not to anger me." It is the witch of the mountains of Morn I am, and no one enters them without gaining my leave. And how is it you keep everyone out, old woman? Gila inquired, not sounding particularly impressed. The rod swung out again, this time pointed higher. As it completed its circle, the sound of footsteps arose all around them in the darkness. They came closer, and figures emerged from the black beyond the firelight, marching to the wedge-shaped rays cast between the heads. There were warriors, brightly cloaked, richly harnessed, glinting long swords clutched ready in their hands. But they were not living men, for none of them had his head. From all sides they moved in, coming to the edge of the circle, each stopping close beside one of the heads, and completely surrounding the three. Lou watched them, realizing with a sinking heart that they had managed to get themselves trapped once again. That fact seemed not to bother the clown at all. He looked with interest round the circle at the nightmare band, saying, "Ah, is it the other part of them? Come now. They'll likely be happy at being so close together again, or are they matched up properly?" "Your jesting won't help you, fool," she said. "These warriors angered me. They tried to battle me. You can join them if you wish, or you can leave these mountains with your heads." "We're not going back," he said stolidly. "You'll not go on either unless you accept my company without complaint," she told him, and commanded sharply, "Sit." So this is about hospitality, right? Gila did as she asked, crouching by the fire. With a wave of his hand, he signaled the others to do the same. "Now you'll share my food," she said. She lifted iron spits laid in the fire, handed one across to each of them. Their ends were fixed with fat chunks of meat, but although they had been lying directly on the flames, they had not cooked. The red, sagging flesh oozed with dark, half-congealed blood that plopped in thick globules onto the bare earth. "It's raw," Lou said in unconcealed disgust. "If you refuse my food, you insult me. You'd best leave my mountains before my wrath falls upon you," she threatened. "Well, we're not leaving, and we're surely not eating this muck," Gila responded boldly, throwing down his spit. "And I'm thinking we've had more than enough of this. I am that." "You defy me," she cried, drawing her scrawny body up. "I mean, it's all really a bit much, isn't it?" Gila went on reasonably. "You didn't expect to frighten us with it, did ya? So you just be good about it. Let it go." She rose to her feet and lifted her bony arms above her head, vibrating with rage. She swung the wand violently back and forth round the circle. "Leave these mountains now," she shrieked in a voice like cracking ice. "Leave now or you will be destroyed. Destroyed! Destroyed!" Her voice was hot. Hold on. I'm trying not to laugh. I'm doing my best. "Destroyed!" Her voice rose higher in each of the final words. The one swung faster. The warriors seized the heads beside them by trailing hair and lifted them from the stakes. Together like one being, they strode forward in glaring heads uplifted in one hand, the swords brandished in the other. Lou and Ain rose and moved back to back, awaiting the attack. The lad was certain that this time the clown's madness had doomed them. If you're not going to be unfriendly about it, Gila said with resignation and launched himself forward, the power of his long legs propelling him across the fire upon the hag. She fell back as he grabbed at her, the wand spinning from her hand, falling into the flames. The fire exploded, seemed to blossom, flames curling open like the petals of some giant incandescent flower, sweeping over Lou, Ain, Gila, and the hag. The warriors in their heads, burying them all with its brilliance. Okay, that is the end. The next chapter will be the Druid's House. Okay, and that is where I take a break and then come back and read again. We are a little over halfway. Say we have this much left. Alrighty, excellent. No, drink, hail. I'm like, all right. All February, into March. Oh, yes. Irish heritage. I know. But the Isles in general. Yeah. That wind is going. Oh, gotta stand your ground. Hold your feet up. Courage under fire. But it was the way you're gonna listen to your heart song. Was one come along and said, hail to the mountain dew. Yeah, switch over. do it. Space, the final frontier. Folk soul, the final frontier, where no sane or normal person would ever go. No, only the folk would dare go there. Okay, here we go. Oh, yes. You know who's coming back right now. She's going to make an appearance. Baby. I'm going to ask her. We'll see. Hi, Kitty Commander. You gonna come my way? Are you gonna stand on the side of the road? Or you gonna shine on the city? Which way home? Would you pick me up on High Kitty Commander mother step? Maybe just send down a scout to pick me up, baby. Come on. Take me for a trip on the sea. Do you got a good microphone? She said, yeah. It's right here, next to the captain's chair. She said, can you sit right here? I said, what's that? Sit down. Our ship runs on music. Oh, soul. Said it's got to be 100% all the way. Warp God, warp H. Warp drive engage. Aye, Captain. Make it so. She said, I heard you. How can you remember? You take me to a higher frequency. 'Cause everybody knows you got the highest frequency. That's why you sit on the high chair, baby. Come on. For the Lord. Take me to the planet of the Lord. Shining like light. They were floating above the ground. Shining, shine, shining we, shine, shine, shine. Oh, Thank you. We all know what that means. It's just a pick, right? Welcome to springtime, almost here around the corner. Oh, get ready. This is coming down. Changes in the wind. Circle around.